In this tutorial, we are going to create a stored procedure in SQL Server where we pass in parameters and then use those parameters in our code to obtain a specific result. Let's begin. For this tutorial, we're going to use our SQL Server stored procedure that we created in a previous support desk video. If you have not seen the tutorial, we recommend that you stop this video here and do so now. Using parameters in a SQL Server stored procedure is a great way to customize the results you will generate based on the user's input. Setting up parameters is very easy. After the name of your stored procedure, start with an open parenthesis, then enter in your parameter names, followed by a closed parenthesis. We'll get to the specifics on the parameters themselves in a moment. The parameters that are passed in can now be used throughout your SQL Server stored procedure. The proper syntax for naming your parameters are as follows. You will start with the @sign, the character located above the number 2 on your keyboard, followed by a descriptive name for your parameter, then the type to declare the parameter, and finally, you can set the parameter to a default value. Default values are optional. In our example, we want to return all of the jobs where the quantity released is between two values. However, the user sets what the range is, so we need to pass in a min and max value so we can get the proper results. We have two parameters set up. The first is quantity released minimum value, set to the type of decimal, defaulted to a value of 0. Our second parameter is the quantity released maximum value, also set to a type of decimal, defaulted to a value large enough to return the highest released quantities. Now that we have our parameters set up, we can use them in our SQL Server stored procedure code. In our code, you can see we are selecting our job and quantity released columns. We then set up our query criteria to only return data that is greater than or equal to the released minimum and less than or equal to the released maximum parameters. Instead of using the greater than and less than symbols, we could have also used the keyword between in our query as well. Both queries will work the same way. Let's go ahead and commit our changes to the SQL Server stored procedure to our database by clicking the Execute button on the toolbar. If there are no errors in the code, the message window at the bottom will display Commands completed successfully. Now that we have our stored procedure in the database, we can go ahead and execute it. Go ahead and open a new query window by clicking the New Query button on the toolbar. Then in the query window type in exec, followed by the name of your stored procedure, then a value for the minimum parameter, a comma, then a value for the maximum parameter. Now, click the Execute button on the toolbar. What were your results? What do you think will happen when you try to execute the stored procedure without any values for the parameters? Stop the video here and give it a try. Did all of the data for that table get returned? That is because we set up default values for our parameters. If we didn't set up any default values for our parameters, then trying to execute the stored procedure without passing in any values, we would have received an error. It is always good programming practice to default your stored procedure parameters with some value. This concludes our tutorial of writing a SQL Server stored procedure with parameters. If you found this information helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Support Desk channel. Also, check out our other Support Desk videos, and if you have an IT question that needs to be answered, leave it in the comments section below.